So let's talk about placeholders now. Placeholders essentially allow you to create your scenes and set up camera overlays in special places that are according to your design. And if you want specific cameras to show up in those camera placeholders in each and every different scene without you having to make those changes manually, then you can always set it that way. So let's say, for example, in one scene, you have yourself only, and then another scene you have yourself and a guest, and then another scene you have yourself and two guests. Well, you can take those guest placeholders or your camera placeholders and you can assign them to specific camera A, B, or C positions. And then you can also take those guests and say, put guest one into placeholder B and take guest number two into placeholder C as an example. So what you can see here on my Ecamm interface here is I've got a spot for guest one. And in my Ecamm for Zoom, you can see that I have actually two more guests that are part of this production. So I've already added their cameras into Ecamm Live. However, you can see that I have this placeholder here for guest number one. Now, I can go ahead and change this at any time by hitting the pencil icon and saying, okay, is it going to be one of my onboard cameras, or is it going to be one of these specific users that are connected by Ecamm for Zoom or in a guest placeholder? I'm going to suggest that you use the guest placeholders, or if you'd like, you can use camera A, B, or C, which are more universal placeholders. Then you can do something like that. So right now I'm going to leave it as guest one, and I'm going to use this person here as my guest one video. So let me just move that into place for you to see. And what you can do is you can click on the three dots beside that person's video, and you can say assign them to placeholder guest one, and watch what happens in the main preview window. Boom. Now guest one is added to this spot here. So now if I go ahead and create a new scene and I just call this guest one and I add a new camera overlay, I can say that this special spot here is always going to be guest one. So when I switch between this camera that has myself and guest one to only this one that has guest one, then that's perfect. Now, as an example, if I wanted to now take the other guest and put them or assign them into guest one, it's going to override and remove the first person, and it's now going to watch. And once I switch this, and now it's going to say it's now the second person in there, and now I can go into this spot or this scene and it's now this other guest user. See, so what ends up happening is that camera placeholder will always be assigned to whoever you are putting in to that camera spot or placeholder. So keep that in mind there. Now, all of your guests, when you're bringing them into Ecamm for Zoom or when you're bringing them through interview mode, right? All of your guests, you can have each and every single one of their videos recorded simultaneously. So it's just a feed of their own. And again, we've got another video based on that called ISO recording or ISO recording. So you can just go ahead and look in the playlist and find that video and you'll find out all about that. Now, so what you want to do is when you're designing your scenes and using these camera placeholders, identify where you want to put these guests and assign them guests 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what's nice about this is that when you are, for example, hosting a podcast or hosting some sort of a video live stream or recorded where you have yourself and maybe more than one guest, you can always have them something like this. So you can create a new scene, and then I can say this overlay here. And let's just say I have two more guests. Okay, so I'm going to put this one here, and this one's going to be my camera. Remember, when you add a new camera overlay, it'll default to your default camera. And I'm just going to hold down the Option key and click and drag this, and that will duplicate it. And then let's do it one more time and duplicate it again. Okay, so I now have three different camera placeholders, and they're all me right now. But this one, I can say assign this placeholder to guest one, and assign this one to guest number two. So now guest number two spot, as you can see, is empty. It doesn't exist. So now I'm going to go ahead and add this placeholder or this guest into the spot number two. So now you can see why I'm going to assign these placeholders to specific guests, because if I'm going to add a text overlay, and this one is called guest 1, and I'm going to put that down here beside their name, right? And then this one, I'm just duplicating it right now, and this one is called guest 2. All right, so what's going to happen here is because guest 1, this this one is the guest 1 placeholder spot. You can always know that every scene that you create with guest 1, and when you're assigning this camera feed as guest 1, you can always have that correct name showing up. So it's not all of a sudden moving, and it's like the wrong name under the wrong person. So this is something that you're going to start using when you're doing your camera placeholders. Now there is an additional type of camera placeholder, and that is the AB camera placeholder. So you can see here you've got all your camera sources, which essentially are every single one of your cameras as well as the guest cameras, because you've now added those feeds in. But you've got all this other kind of a placeholder. It's called A, B, C, and you can also add different additional camera placeholders. So like, for example, I'm going to add another placeholder camera, and now that's called camera C, right? And then there's this special one called the Zoom active speaker role. Just watch out for the video. Go find that video in the playlist for the Zoom active speaker, and I'll show you exactly what that's about. But camera A, B, C, and D in this example is another type of a placeholder that allows you to use or put your cameras in as well as the guests. But generally speaking, I would leave this for your cameras. So for people who have multiple cameras connected to their computer systems, when they're connected by USB, what happens with Mac computers is when you reboot your computer, your cameras may switch, and they may switch spots. If that's the case, then basically it's not an Ecamm thing, it's a Mac thing, right? It just depends on which order your Mac decided to detect the USB cameras in sequence. So if you've got 3 cameras, it might load it as camera 1, 2, 3 that time that you're using it, but then the next time it might load camera 2, 3, 1, and all of a sudden, why are my cameras in the wrong places? If that's what's happening to you, then you'll want to use the A, B, and or CD kind of camera placeholders, so that you'll know that this position here is always going to be camera A, and this position here is always going to be camera B and camera C. Pretend these are not guests, pretend these are multiple cameras on my same Mac. And so all of a sudden, if you notice that, well, camera A is switched, it's actually supposed to be my main front camera, you go over here and you switch that to your main camera. And that's all you need to switch. You don't need to switch these, your camera placeholders in all of the different scenes that you've assigned it to. You'll just go to this AB switcher and you'll change it from there. So that's the other piece of the camera switchers or the camera placeholders. So you've got guest placeholders as well as fixed position placeholders, so camera A, B, C. And for the most part, you're going to use the A-B switchers for your physical cameras, and then add the guest placeholders separately so that you can simply go into your guests videos and then say assign to placeholder 1, assign to placeholder 2. Now you'll notice that placeholder 1 and 2 now have names beside it. What's essentially going to happen there is your Ecamm Live is going to remember that person who comes back on by their name. So if I happen to have guest 4 assigned to this video person and they join again later, by default, Ecamm's going to say, well, last time they were also guest 4, so let me put them back in guest 4. That's going to happen. So this is kind of a little way for you to get things assigned quickly, especially if they have to somehow jump off, or maybe their internet connection dropped and their Zoom crashed or closed and they had to come back in. Once they come back in and you add their video source, they will switch back into that exact same guest spot placeholder that they were in. So just keep that in mind as you're doing that. I hope you're really enjoying this Ecamm Live Masterclass, because this has been an absolute joy for me to actually create. And the reason why is because I just love Ecamm Live and I love the whole aspect of content creation, and I hope that you do as well. So please go ahead, leave some comments below. Let me know how you feel about this. Let me know if you have other questions about the specific topic that I'm sharing in this video. And Another thing that I really want you to do right now is I want you to go ahead and scan this QR code or click the link in the description below, because this is where I'm going to be housing not only just this Ecamm Live Masterclass, but a lot of cool extras that are not going to be found on YouTube. So you have to register for absolutely for free in order to grab this content. It's in my member portal. So go ahead, scan the QR code or click the link in the description, and I will see you on the other side.